So here's part two. One thing I failed to mention when I was talking about the latitudinarianism of the patriot parishes was a reminder about the nature of latitudinarianism in the American church. By that I mean a great deal of toleration for religious pluralism and difference, not only for Roman Catholics but for immigrants to America in their various religious allegiances. So you have Anglicans who are patriots who support the Revolution, who are certainly very committed to their own Anglican tradition, but who have a kind of openness to religious pluralism. I just wanted to punctuate that point to make sure that you understand this concept of latitudinarianism in American Christianity. But back to Connecticut and to Samuel Seabury. The ordination problem had already arisen in Connecticut some years before the outbreak of the American Revolution. In 1722, a majority of the faculty at Yale College defected from Congregationalism. We can all clap and say what a great thing that was. They defected from Anglicanism, and they took with them a number of clergy in the New Haven area. These were people who had serious misgivings about the consequences of the Great Awakening and tendencies within Congregationalism. These disaffected faculty members and clergy people in New Haven sought to align themselves with Anglicanism, but also Anglican orders. They wanted to be ordained in the Anglican Church and said that they would go to England in order to be ordained because there was no bishop in America. And they sought to be ordained even though they were already ordained in the congregational tradition, because they did not consider their congregational ordination to be valid. They sought episcopal orders, episcopal ordination, ordination in apostolic succession. Very interesting. So these clergymen made it clear that America needed to consider having a bishop in order to ordain clergy on our own soil, as opposed to requiring people to go to England to be ordained by bishops there. After the American Revolution, there were 20 priests remaining in Connecticut. 14 of those had close ties to those Yale apostates from 1722. And those priests were the ones who militated at a very early time for a bishop in America. As you've already read in your textbook, after the Revolution and after the first General Convention of the Episcopal Church in America, that Samuel Seabury was put forward as a candidate, but he was certainly a conflicted candidate for the post. Seabury was a strong-minded high churchman. That is, he had a strong view of episcopacy, but he also had a strong view of episcopacy as linked to the monarchy. He was a loyalist, and he had been a chaplain to the British troops. Not exactly the guy you want to put forward as your first American bishop. Ultimately, the American Revolution and the Disestablishment Clause in the Bill of Rights and the consecration of Samuel Seabury in 1784 by non-juring bishops in Scotland introduced all sorts of tensions for the Anglican Church in America. That is, what will become the Episcopal Church. And those implications are still with us. And I've kind of factored them out into 13 points that I think are worth keeping in mind. Some of them are framed as questions, some of them framed as statements. Here's the first one as a question. To what extent is Anglican identity wedded to the act of supremacy? Another way of putting that is a second question. To what extent is Anglican identity tied to loyalty to the British monarch, who's the head of the church? A third way of stating the same question: are episcopacy and monarchy inextricably bound together? And then some information by way of points. The fourth point: the non-juring bishops in Scotland were not anti-monarchical. That's important to remember. They weren't anti-monarchical. A fifth point: their sympathizers, that is, the sympathizers of the non-juring bishops, both clergy sympathizers and lay sympathizers, considered those non-jurors to be the true guarantors of episcopacy and apostolic succession. By their lights, and this is the sixth point, it was the conforming bishops, those bishops who swore an oath to William and Mary, who were apostate. But the non-jurors, here's the seventh point, the non-jurors were loyal to a dead king, James II, and to a dynasty, the Stuart dynasty, that existed only in potential and no longer in reality. An eighth point: the non-juring bishops had been deprived of their sees by an act of Parliament. But then a ninth point: they had not been canonically deposed. So then a 10th point and a question: were the non-juring bishops lawful bishops? Or 11, were their ordinations still valid? A 12th question: could they lawfully consecrate a bishop whom they knew could not swear an oath to the act of supremacy? That's important. Could these non-juring bishops, regardless of their own legality, lawfully consecrate a bishop, that is Samuel Seabury, whom they knew could not swear an oath to the act of supremacy? So 13, the final question: given the irregularities, could American Anglicans really lay claim to the historic episcopacy with any sort of theological credibility? Does your head hurt yet? When we get to William White in a couple of weeks, you're going to see that things were even more complicated. Remember, William White was the priest, the lone priest in Pennsylvania, located in Philadelphia. After 1785, Parliament decided that English bishops could consecrate American bishops. They had lost the war. The colonies were free to set up their own nation. But they recognized that there were Anglicans in the colonies. They recognized that the church in the colonies needed to continue to exist. And so Parliament voted to allow English bishops to consecrate American priests as bishop, and they did so. They consecrated William White in Philadelphia, and they consecrated Samuel Provoost in New York in 1787. So get this: in 1787 there were in effect two episcopates in America. One episcopate, starting in 1784, was Scottish, High Church, and Tory. That's Samuel Seabury. The other episcopate was English, Latitudinarian, and Patriot. That is, White and Provoost. This was not resolved until the General Convention of 1789, which we're going to deal with to some greater extent in our third week, and we're going to spend some good time with White's work. But to anticipate that, the result of these events, starting with the consecration of Seabury in 1784, was a revolution of its own in the tradition of the Anglican episcopacy. In America, a previously monarchical institution gave way to a democratic institution, a democratic episcopacy, an institution that provided for lay representation, an elected episcopacy, and strong vestries at the local level. That's a fundamental sea change that we're going to be dealing with for the next couple of weeks. But that's all for now.